Thank you everybody for joining, and excited to have everybody here for our service management, not just for IT anymore. We'll be talking about enterprise service management, and let's get this webinar kicked off. So a little bit about this webinar. Yes, we are recording. I just double checked, we are. Recording will be shared following the live webinar. We'll get it out to everybody this week, and so you'll have it in your hands. We'll also share out the slides that we present as well. And as always, we welcome questions, and we'll be answering them at the end of the presentation. If you're new to Zoom, I don't know how that's possible, but welcome, and use the Q&A button down at the bottom to ask questions, and we'll get those questions at the end of the webinar. So a little bit about ISOS. We started in 2005, so we've been around for quite a while. We were writing custom code for large customers, and we were using the Atlassian tools to help them to run our business, to solve problems there. And all of a sudden, our customers were less interested in the code we were writing. I still think we did it pretty well, but they were interested in our tools and processes. And we started saying, hey, we can help people understand how to use the Atlassian tools to have better impacts in their organizations and better impact on their processes. Fast forward to today, we are anything and everything Atlassian. We are agile at scale specialized partners. We're cloud specialized partners. They haven't released quite the enterprise ITSM specialization yet, but we will have that as two-time ITSM partners of the year. It's definitely something that's on our roadmap, but we're a group of folks that love helping people solve problems with the Atlassian tools spread across the US. So how we work with our customers and get engaged with them, and this story might resonate with a lot of folks on the call, but a lot of our customers start using Jira somewhere along the process, right? And then, Jira is not enough. You start adding all these things in. You add Confluence, you add apps, you have tool growth, all of these things you start layering in on Jira. And then before you know it, the tools become mission critical. It doesn't stop there. So as you continue to grow your organization, your processes, more and more complexity comes in. You might find out in your organization that there's 30 different instances of Jira, either through M&A or just from natural organic growth across your organization. Business teams start using Jira. And then at the end of it, you found yourself that you have an enterprise solution. We help our customers anywhere along this spectrum, and they reach out at different challenges along the way. So this is how we interact and help with most of our customers. But what we really like to talk about is that, yes, technology is at our core, and we see technology driving towards value, but it's so much more than technology. What we really see is that people and practices are really the key to achieving true value. That, hey, there's this baseline fundamental technology we'll build on, but it's really about how do we help people, culture, practices to succeed and to really drive value. And that's really our focus, and where we really think that we can help out. So enough about ISOS. That's the little commercial there. But I'd really like to introduce you to our panelists today, our speakers today. So let me start by introducing Nick. Nick Sommerfeld is an expert at Atlassian consultant on professional services team here at ISOS. He has over a decade of experience in the Atlassian ecosystem and a background in agile product and project management. Nick designs and delivers custom solutions for technical and business teams across mid-size and enterprise organization. Nick focuses on bringing long-term value to clients and partnering with them to achieve their strategic goals through creative solutioning, process improvement, data analysis, and improved customer experiences. He's a speaker, thought leader who's presented at digital and in-person Atlassian events and frequently participates in the ISOS webinar like the one today, and at Atlassian community events. When he's not working, you can find him at the beach with his dog, Bailey. Nick, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
There you go. There's the intro. Julie, and so our other panelist we have is Julie. Julie Mohr serves IT service management and enterprise service management professionals supporting the transformation of IT operations into forward-thinking, customer-centric service organizations. Her research includes service portfolio and catalog management, incident problem management, and service desk, knowledge management, and self-service and industry frameworks. Julie's research also integrates the intangibles to infrastructure and operations success, including capacity building, organizational change, culture, and collaboration. Since 2004, Julie has served as an industry expert in public speaking, specializing in ITSM and knowledge management. As a practitioner, she worked for various companies, including Delta Dental, National Institutes, and NASA. Julie was a co-author of the Knowledge Management Practice in ITIL and is the author of the Help Desk Audit, a governance framework for assessing the maturity of the incident management and service desk practice areas. Julie earned a bachelor's in science and computer science from The Ohio State University and a master's in education from the University of Phoenix, and is currently working on her PhD from the University of Phoenix. And I don't think I mentioned this, but Julie joins us from Forrester. Julie, welcome. You want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely. We're excited you could join us. And I'd like to, turn the first part of this presentation over to Julie. And Julie, walk us through what is ESM. I know you're doing some exciting new research in the area as well, and just help orient us and our audience on ESM.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to come here and share the screen with all of you and talk about some of my favorite topics ever. I just want to begin by kind of acknowledging the extraordinary efforts of knowledge workers over the last 2 years. I think we've demonstrated that the work from home model can not only work, but thrive. And I think we've proven just how resilient knowledge workers are, being able to adapt so quickly to the changing environment. It really shows that our hearts are big, and our desire to serve is clearly evident. So hats off to all of you. So, the pandemic has not been our only influencer in the industry. We're kind of in this really chaotic pace of change, and many organizations have had to rethink their delivery of services and focus their efforts on better serving the internal employee that is responsible for that service delivery and innovation. As part of our discussion today, I really kind of wanted to start off by establishing where we are right now as it relates to service management and how it's improving operations and the knowledge worker, but also how it's addressing the transformation of business operations with service thinking. So there's an interesting relationship between knowledge and innovation and how knowledge workers are using knowledge to drive that innovation. It probably comes as no surprise to anybody who's responsible for driving those change initiatives, but innovation is really a knowledge-intensive business process. We need data that can help to support decision-making on what improvements we need to make in the environment. What services do our customers actually need? How can we best improve the customer experience? And of course, the internal employee experience. So innovation is this constant demand on the business, and knowledge is really critical to help guiding through that transformation. Now, one of the research data points that we found in a recent survey really shows that these transformation initiatives are struggling related to this knowledge, right? 2 of the top challenges are either skills-based or knowledge-based. And it's important for us to acknowledge that, these are challenges that organizations are facing, and we really need to address how we're capturing knowledge, but also how we're using that knowledge to support the transformation that the businesses are demanding. So this makes the knowledge worker and their productivity so important to the contribution of these innovation projects. But knowledge workers can face some significant challenges in the environment that impede their ability to make those decisions and impact their productivity. Now, the first thing that we see is that we often can have, diminished productivity for knowledge workers. And this can be from a variety of different things, but traditionally we're using outdated technologies. And so because those technologies don't really support the knowledge worker activities, that in its own self can decrease productivity. The other is a subpar knowledge experience or the knowledge worker experience. And this is really kind of not using innovative technologies that can really drive a better work experience for employees. We have a lot of things that are still being done on a manual basis, and that leads to internal delays on the business processes. And one of the things that's most important to knowledge workers is the ability to work autonomously. And so if we're not capturing knowledge and we're not making that knowledge easily accessible, you're always constantly asking someone else to continue on with your work process, it can dramatically impact the productivity and autonomy. And another important part of this is missing the connection between what we do in our knowledge work and the business outcomes that we're really seeking. We really don't have complete visibility into the end-to-end value stream, which is really important. So what we see is that organizations that focus on improving the overall employee experience can dramatically improve knowledge worker productivity, especially when there's a conscious effort to invest in technologies that can deliver a better employee experience. Now, enterprise service management is just one of these, these experience-aware technologies. But when we can put these solutions in place, this provides the vehicle for knowledge workers to respond to issues faster, uncover unnoticed issues, avoid common issues, automate support in the environment, and because they're more efficient in the way that they're working, the internal employee can then deliver better customer experiences. So what have we learned here about enterprise service management and its role in supporting knowledge workers? I think the first thing is that this is no longer an emerging market. What we have seen is a clear mainstream capability for the enterprise, and that's important. This is no longer experimental, it works, and now organizations are really driving a lot of this productivity enhancement through the enterprise service management platforms. Adoption is increasing, especially in the business operational environment, and not just in the traditional areas. They're, kind of the low-hanging fruit that we will use these platforms as an initial use case, sometimes in HR or procurement or facilities. Now we see this expanding into so many different use cases. It's very broad application of the platform across business operations. And what we see is any situation where you have supply and demand, right? So you've got demand coming, and those knowledge workers are in a position where they are working to supply whatever is needed to that demand, but this is the platform that is really driving that change in the organization. Now, this picture just briefly kind of shows and demonstrates that supply and demand. We see an expansion from demand. It's not just internal employees, it's contractors, suppliers, partners, and in some case, customers. And then the supply is the fulfillment is coming not just from IT, but legal, procurement, HR, facilities, accounting, and the list can go on. The secret sauce, or the great part about enterprise service management, is not just that it provides a platform for managing this, but it's also the IT service management practices that have been long-standing embedded into these products, these platforms, that are helping to drive the efficiencies. So dashboarding, alerts, activities, coordinating of tasks across functional teams, the ability to capture knowledge and to use that knowledge within those workflows, managing communication across the organization. So it's not, it's providing a system of record for all of that work, but helping organizations to apply best practices to how that work gets managed. So we see a lot of organizations that are adopting enterprise service management. Back in 2019, when we initially ran this study, we had 78% of the customers that were interviewed has at least one use case of leveraging enterprise service management to do something outside of the IT organization. And that's important that, it's not just one case. Many organizations had more than one use case for the platform. So it's not just, enterprise service management is not just the platform for work. It's also the practices within that platform that are allowing organizations to innovate business operations with service thinking. So thus far, I've talked about how enterprise service management is really bringing in the business operations side, helping to manage the supply and demand that comes from business operations. But we also see this critical trend of the platforms also going into the development teams. Now, why is this important? We have this one platform that is now covering the entire digital pipeline. So everything from developments through to operations, out to business operations, and in some cases, being able to also be pushed out to the customer. And that's very important when you have visibility into the entire digital pipeline. You're better managing the work across the enterprise. So when we talk about service thinking, these are the IT service management practices that are now being applied much more broadly across the enterprise. So it's workflow management, connecting work across functional teams, better enabling collaboration. It's a catalog of requestable services, and not just IT services, but also HR, payroll, finance, right? All these internal provided services in business operations. So now as an employee, I don't have to go to one platform for HR. I don't have to go to another platform for IT. We have a unified, integrated portal, which really dramatically improves the knowledge worker experience and decreases that app switching that we're constantly dealing with on a day-to-day basis. That drives a lot of inefficiencies for knowledge workers. Because these platforms have been around in the IT operational environment, we also have a significant amount of automation that can be leveraged across business operations as well. And the most important here for the knowledge workers is being able to capture knowledge. Now it's not just IT knowledge for helping to resolve issues more quickly. It's all types of knowledge across business, IT, and development teams. And the great part about this is we now have visibility into that end-to-end pipeline, because most of these platforms also provide advanced analytics that help us to understand, is the work that we are doing as knowledge workers impacting the business outcomes that we really desire? So it's optimizing the work that we do and tying it back to business outcomes. So the most recent study, we saw this uptick, 83% of respondents report at least one non-IT use case. But in addition to the uptake in using this in business operations, we also see how creatively it's being applied in business operations. This slide just shows us, a few ways in which organizations are embracing using IT service management across different industries. So the main product of knowledge workers is their knowledge, and organizations that are successfully using enterprise service management to better improve the knowledge worker experience are seeing improvements in productivity, but are also helping to transform business operations and improve the overall digital experience of employees. So that's just kind of the context for our discussion that we're going to have.
That's fantastic, Julie. Thank you for that. Again, if anybody has any questions along the way, just load them up in the Q&A and we'll get to them as well. Great. So let's get to our panel discussion based on kind of setting that scene, setting that table with ITSM and some of that latest research. Julie's fantastic. And I'd love to dig in a little bit more on a couple of things you mentioned. One, you started with acknowledging, kind of the global disruption that we've had. We've had global COVID response. We've had localized events that reverberate globally. The invasion of Ukraine, Great Resignation. I know you have some thoughts around that, but Julie, I'm curious, what has your research shown with the outside influence, these outside influences in the adoption or even the success of orgs working with more systematic ESM approach?
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many things going on in society as a whole that are impacting the enterprise, whether it's the pandemic, which was initiated 2 years ago. We have this invasion of Ukraine that's impacted development significantly. And a lot of individuals are questioning their work-life balance. And so when we start struggling with the loss of talent, the enterprise service management platform itself, those companies that I've talked to that had very robust knowledge management practices before some of this, churn in the workforce, have really positioned themselves to be much more successful to manage that. And I can't think, given what we've seen over the last 5 years, that these things are just all of a sudden all going to go away. We're going to be dealing with new challenges that come into the environment. So if organizations have not been leveraging platforms to help capture knowledge that allows them to do, to more successfully manage the flux of the impact of these trends that we're seeing, that's something that they dramatically need to be focusing on in the next couple of years. Without successful planning for that, you're going to continue to see these, external influencers really impacting the way that operations can function. So I think, something like enterprise service management that is tying work across the enterprise and combining that with knowledge really helps to prepare organizations for these influencers, external influencers.
Yeah, I love that. And, one of the things you said was, hey, it's not going to just go away. This isn't a speed bump that we just clear and then it's smooth sailing. It's fundamentally changed. We have a much more fluid workforce, work from anywhere. The reliability or the reliance on, hey, poke your head over the cubicle wall and ask so-and-so the question because she's been here for 15 years. Like that, that you can't count on any of that anymore. Nick, what are you seeing from, you're on the front lines with our customers. I think a big word we use a lot is resiliency, to kind of articulate and describe that. What are you seeing from the front lines?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resiliency with teams that made the switch pre-pandemic or pre-changing in the workforce, right? And they're having success. No magic ball, they didn't see it coming, but they made the change, and we're seeing that companies are continuing down that path. Like you mentioned, it's something that's not going to end. So they're taking a hard, long look at, are they resilient in that space of knowledge workers and the ability to deliver services internally? Because it's not, maybe they've already touched on, outages or security vulnerabilities with hacking, right? But your ability to be resilient in your internal service delivery is also something that companies are taking a good, long, hard look at now.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. But let's switch topics a little bit and shift in how work gets done. This is a bigger shift across organizations, enterprises. It's not just ESM. So Julie, I know that we've talked about ESM is not on an island on its own. It's part of the larger value stream. And one of those connections is getting info and data back into dev teams. I think you mentioned it in your presentation where you're talking about the whole digital pipeline. If you could just kind of dive in on that a little bit deeper.
Sure. I think, when we look at innovation and the importance that is for driving change within the business, many organizations are driving innovation through internally developed products and services. And so in order to make those products and then the transition for that innovation to happen as quickly as possible, they're embracing agile and DevOps. And when that pipeline then hits into the IT operational environment, there's often a disconnect. They want to automate and get these iterative improvements and user requested features and functionality into the environment as quickly as possible. So many of the enterprise service management platforms have viewed this as an important part of extending the platform in support of those knowledge workers, making it easier, breaking down the barrier between dev and ops, so that you get a much more streamlined process of bringing new features and capabilities into the products that are helping to innovate more quickly. So it gives you visibility end to end in that value stream, and it definitely can help with the productivity, of connecting the dots between development and the push of innovation into the environment, so that it's supported. It's, we're tying it to security, right? We're able to connect the dots and to really push the work stream to be much more agile, instead of being a resistance and all these gates that have to be circumvented in order to get something into the environment.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's, I think I've heard the phrase, part of it is bringing the invisible work visible, making the invisible work visible. So, now we can see that through the pipeline, but, as it gets back to the dev teams, it's also part of this important feedback loop, right? A lot of that feedback comes from outside sources that aren't necessarily from the QA teams, right? It's from other parts of the organization. And then even having that data in there allows you to introspect and say, well, hey, why is it taking us, 22 days to approve an NDA, right? Like, you can start to say and work and maximize that value stream and bring value to the organization faster, not just your external customers, but your internal customers. I think that's great. Nick, from your side, how do you see that fitting in the larger landscape of what our clients are trying to do? Like, you have some examples there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's that shift that we're talking about from, the more technical side, the IT side, into the business side of things, right? ESM, more business side relative to ITSM. So, we have a lot of different examples, broadcast companies using enterprise service management for customers to request digital assets from affiliates, as an example, or universities opening up a portal for ESM for students or faculty to submit requests or tickets through. Pharmaceutical companies.
What would be some of those examples in the university? Like, do you have some of the, sorry to put you on the spot, but
yeah. So from a student perspective, maybe it can be IT related for them, but it's also something that's going to go direct to faculty, right? So students and faculty can both submit. Students can also submit to faculty. So requests like book questions on books, on classes, on anything that's not really IT related.
Stuff we've got, like stuff traditionally buried in email and
right, it's
around and
yeah, all about bringing those types of things out of email and into a visible portal. But we have pharmaceutical companies who have submissions for lab requests, or something as widespread as credit unions or banks using it to consolidate their branch requests. And naturally, that's going to come into an IT world, but it's a great way to bring the non-IT people into the submission of tickets for other branches. And then holistically, we're pretty familiar with a voice of a customer type approach, right? Where you're engaging your external customers on great ideas. But we also see a lot of clients, and I like to leave this behind as whenever I'm doing it, is a voice of the employee, for lack of a better phrase, right? Great idea submissions for any team. So if you've got an enhancement you'd like or a suggestion to make, you can use that portal to make that request as well, or that suggestion.
Love it. And Julie, you've mentioned the platform along the way, and having attended the Atlassian team event recently, I remember a stat from their COO, Anu. She was talking about the average enterprise has 187 SaaS apps, And so when you start to think about what are all those apps doing, and how can we streamline and consolidate and get all that data digital pipeline down into, a handful of platforms versus 187 different platforms. It starts to, when you start to think about transformation, digital transformation in that light, it's an important piece of it for sure. Cool. Okay, so ITSM to ESM. How do we, well, Julie, let me start with you. What can you tell us about the shift that's happening of organizations saying, look, how do we get from ITSM to ESM? Are there certain industries faster to adopt? Are there specific challenges? Any sort of research tidbits to throw in there that you see?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's important not to think about this as, some broad sweeping change that, you're going to introduce it to the business and they're just going to love it, right? The business operations have long-standing processes that are ingrained in their culture. And so it often is very helpful to focus on one use case and something that may be of a challenge to the organization. So your question earlier about universities, right? Universities have this tremendous student onboarding that happens at the beginning of the year and then at each semester or quarter throughout the year. And it's a huge, intensive business process, but it's absolutely needed. And it's everything from sharing documents to getting approvals, making sure that people submit, their applications and get their references. And there's all kinds of things that are tied to that. So if you have a fairly complex use case that the business is struggling with, they're more likely to be open and receptive to using a new platform to help manage that work. And one of the important things to also think about is you're not actually going in and saying, we're going to use this one platform to completely replace every other system that you use. What you're doing is you're using this platform to unify the other platforms. So through the integration capabilities in enterprise service management, you're able to, let's connect to the ERP system, or let's connect to the HR system, right? And so it can be the single portal where the work is managed, but it directly integrates, as you were saying, because of all these platforms that we're using. Having one platform that can unify that view and streamline the work that's produced by all these variety of different systems, it can be hugely beneficial. So we don't need to boil the ocean. We don't need to try to go off and tell the business how to do what the business does. But at the same time, there has to be some business process that's struggling. And that's why we see so many respondents in our surveys having one use case. They've started that minimal viable product, get it in there, show the value, show how you can measure and improve, make that invisible visible, and then you're more likely to get traction within other areas of the business.
Yeah, I love that. It's the old phrase of success breeds success. If you just take one, and before you know it, other people, other business units, or even that same business unit in the organization is like, well, I want to do that. I want that. How are they doing that? Right. And it starts to get a momentum of its own that just snowballs. It's fun to see. But Nick, from your side, working with our clients, how do you, what do you see is kind of being one of those keys to success to even getting that one use case going?
Yeah, I mean, like was mentioned, you need a champion, you need a visionary, right? Someone who's going to promote the tool and get it used. And you also need that team champion. So the point of pick a team and start working there. But a lot of success that we see is process assessment. So organizations that are aware that they need to make some change. Take a good long look at the probably overly complex, over-engineered process that's been in place for 20 years that, half of the process doesn't serve a purpose. And on the other side of that, that's where we see a lot of issues is with organizations that don't want to look at that, don't want to reassess their processes. And with these tools, you've got to remember that they have a lot of industry, a lot of best practices built in already. And if you're trying to fight these, and an enterprise service management tool to fit your process, you're already doing it wrong. And so that's where we see some issues with folks trying to get in there. But that whole process adoption or process changing is where we see the most success. And also those who want to get out of email, get out of the distro lists and emails and chat in terms of the submission of requests, get it into a tool that can manage all of that and provide that visibility.
I think that's so important. I think the nugget in there of give it the opportunity to reimagine the process, not just take this old paper process or this manual process and just figure out how to jam it into a tool, but think about the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. What do you want to report on? What do you want visibility on? And yeah,
right. What are your goals? What are the metrics that you're expecting to pull out of this? Because if you're in email, you're not getting any metrics. If you're tracking stuff in a spreadsheet, you're probably not getting metrics either. So the ones that think about the metrics up front and know what they want out of it are the succeed the quickest with the builds.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important that when you are positioning this, that you talk about not just the platform, the technology, but the practice, right? All those other intangibles that can add value, the automation, the single source, for improving the employee experience. All those intangible things that I talked about earlier from the service management practices are where the organization really drives those improvements. We're not just adding another tool into the environment. We are providing a vehicle to innovate the way that the business processes work.
I love that. No, go ahead, Nick, please.
I was going to say, when you provide that, portal that an enterprise service management does, it, that really drives that adoption. It's a cool one-stop shop for, people to go and submit all different types of requests. And on the other side of that, we see issues with businesses trying to avoid the portal and still maintain that email intake into the tool. And it just sort of defeats the entire purpose. So it's, yeah.
It should feel like, hey, this is making my life, my job easier. It's not a tool to crack down on me to make sure I'm doing my job. It's a job. It's something that's like, hey, let's put this over here and make everybody's experience better and drive towards that value. I think that's that's great. And Julie, you touched on something that was part of my opening, which is like, look, the tools are down here. It's the people and the practices that are going to really drive the value for the organization. And let's yes, we'll back it and we'll help support the people and the practices and the processes we want to do by the tools, but let's not have the tools drive it. And that's one of the things as Atlassian partners, we really like the fact that the tools don't drive how you decide how to do work. They're so flexible that they, how you want to do work, you match the tools to that and you put them in place. And I think that is a recipe for success. So I think, Nick, I heard you say have the end in mind from a metrics perspective. Let's have that single use case, the one that we, with a champion that we can go out and implement as well. And I think it's a great way to get started and get that conversation going. All right, I started this a little bit, Nick, but a little bit with your Atlassian goggles on. How does an existing customer get started?
Yeah, so the best place is use it, try it. I favor the MVP approach and getting something out and teams using it. You could spend weeks, months talking about process and over engineering and configurations, but you're going to get your best feedback from just using the tool, putting it out there, getting out of email. And, like I mentioned, these out of the box things for teams like HR or accounting or finance, there are pre-built, in a lot of cases, there are pre-built configurations for you that give you, from an HR perspective, right, automatically an onboarding request type or an offboarding request type, something like that, right? And they have these best practices built in. So it's really get out and start using it as it is, and then come back and look at the changes you'd like to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's one of the things. It's so easy to spin it up in it, especially in your existing Jira instance. You just start a new Jira Service Management project, and all of a sudden you have a portal published and with a URL, and it's easy to start going away. You don't have to write any code. The automation engine is all drag and point and click and all that. So super easy stuff to get started. But I love that. It's like, just get started. Don't get yourself in analysis paralysis. Get started and let people see it, touch it, feel it, and start collecting feedback on that. It's awesome. Julie, from a market perspective, you talk to a lot of organizations. How have you seen organizations successfully adopt a service management platform?
Yeah, so I've taken some inquiries on the knowledge management side, and what platform should we use, and I often say, well, what systems do you have already in place? Do you have something in your IT operations area that you could use for knowledge management? And I think that's an important thing to think about, is often the driver for change on the business side is modernizing their work. And so they're off looking to invest in a platform or something to bring in that can help to improve operations, when the organization has already made a significant investment in this platform that can do what's needed and is highly, you can adapt it to pretty much any use case that you need. And so because you've made this major investment, you want to leverage that investment out to the business operations. So, I don't know many organizations that can afford to pay for one platform for IT and another platform for business operations. These tools are not inexpensive. And so you kind of have to streamline that investment. And we don't want to get into that same challenge where we have all these different systems that we're using, trying to connect them all behind the scenes. So I think what we're seeing from a market perspective is that organizations are realizing the capabilities of these platforms and the practices that are embedded in them. They don't lack for features. They're feature rich, and the developers of the platforms are continuing to innovate and to show how the platform can be used in new areas. So I think from a market perspective, that's what's really driving a lot of the adoption. You can't make this major investment and then just isolate that system to a single functional group within your business. It really is a platform of work across the enterprise.
Yeah, and to put my Atlassian hat back on around, we've talked about knowledge workers for a while, right? But there's a somewhat unsung feature of enterprise service management with Atlassian, where you have a knowledge base, right? And so the idea behind deflecting requests that are common, that you have documentation for that are self-serve, or also documentation that's collaborative that helps the team complete the work. And so when we talk about folks leaving an organization, or new folks coming in, you've got that knowledge base that helps get them up to speed or retains that information, as opposed to someone leaving with all of it, and then you've got to keep rebuilding that knowledge with every new person. So
yeah, I love that. Julie, I want to touch on, you said, hey, organizations can't afford an IT platform and a business operations platform, and where we get involved a lot is they're also involved in a development platform like Jira, right? And it's like, okay, well, how do we leverage that Jira investment across the rest of the organization and solve those other two problems? And so, it's interesting, and we could probably do a whole nother webinar on it, but there are, especially in large enterprises, there's this whole development tool chain that's kind of butting up against the ITSM tool chain, and either they're trying to get them to communicate, which we can do, or they're saying, okay, well, let's pick a winner across the two of them. And those are always really interesting conversations. But it goes into what you're talking about, is kind of this, I want a platform. I want a technology set that can do more than just these one-off kind of niche use cases, and they're built to do all of these things. And I think that's kind of an interesting approach and an interesting place in the market today, is you have these very feature-rich, capable platforms that you mentioned.
Yeah, and the more that we string together this vast amount of tools to create a tool chain that supports that, entire digital pipeline, the more risk, right? We got some in the cloud, some not in the cloud. We've got to integrate. We got to make sure that it's secure. We're just opening up, potential vulnerabilities across that tool chain. So this helps to minimize that by choosing one platform that drives that knowledge work. Doesn't mean that we're going to get rid of every tool in the enterprise, but at the same time, simplifying that tool chain can be of great value to the organization as well.
100%. Like everybody loves to tackle the integration piece at first and say, oh, we can make them all talk together and it'll work and everything's going to sync and it works for a couple months. And then you start doing updates and features and people do configuration changes. And before you know it, you have a whole team tracking down all the integration problems you've created by, maybe not landing on a single platform when you should have. So yeah, I love that. It's interesting. Just to throw it out there, if there are any questions you have for the panel, please throw them out there. Use the little Q&A feature down there. Real fast, we're going to do our lightning round. So just a quick couple questions for our panel. So Julie, I'll start with you. And Nick, same question to you, which is, what is one resource you'd recommend to anyone looking at bringing on ESM into the organization?
I think one of the most important things is your integration partner. I've heard a lot of organizations that have not had the best partners for integration, and either they've driven what the integration partner wants, or the time frame to get there took too long. So it is, it's really important to prove value, nearly immediately, especially when organizations have made such a significant investment. And there's not a lot of patience for, we bought it and 9 months from now we can actually demonstrate results. So you need the right skill sets and you need the right integration partner to get the best value from the system. Because like I said, they are feature rich.
Yeah, love that. Yeah. As an integration partner, we'd like to hear that. So yeah. It's great. Nick, how about yourself?
Yeah, so there's an article, A Buyer's Guide to Enterprise Service Management Products. And I like to use it I recommend it because, there are organizations that have not had these thought exercises around how to choose a tool or what things to ask, what things to think about. Some do. And if they don't, a lot of what's in here are the things that I like to bring up and ask to get a better sense of where their head's at.
Love it. I'm going to play as well. I've got two, and they're two white papers. One is the complete guide to ESM, and the other, that was written by Atlassian, and then ours is the definitive guide to transitioning from ITSM to ESM. We'll put those links out there. I think they're both great reads. But one of the things that's, I think, Julie, you touched on earlier too, was that's so important is you want business to see this as a partnership and benefiting them and getting them on the same page. Even the terminology ESM, for the business partner that hasn't been reading or following the space, they're going to be like, what's IT pushing at me now, right? And so, try to find some resources. I like the talk that Julie led us off with. It's like, hey, here's the problem and here's how we go after it. It's not a technology solution. It's technology enabling a better solution, a better way to work, and trying to get people on the same page. And that's why I recommend those two white papers, is to try and get people in the right mindset of adopting this, not just feeling like it's something that's forced upon them. Second question. What is the one takeaway you want our audience to have? Julie, let's start with you.
I think the most important thing is to start small. I mean, what we've learned from an IT service management perspective is that trying to plan for and create broad sweeping change often does not get the results that we're expecting. And so if we plan for incremental improvements and we track and we measure and we monitor and we use feedback to guide that next iteration, we're more likely not only to demonstrate results earlier, but to guide the organization to an outcome that's aligned with the business. Because remember, the business is constantly changing as well. So if we just go through a 2 or 3 year transition and all of a sudden, the mission has changed. We're really not working effectively with the business. So I would definitely start small, pick an opportunity, go through the process, work on it, get feedback from all players involved, including those employees and knowledge workers. Are we improving their experience? What are the opportunities that we've left out there that we could still get benefit from? But don't boil the ocean. Start small and then champion that success across the organization, and you'll be able to move the platform into new areas to better support the business. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to drive modernization and resilience of the organization as a whole.
Love it. The biggest killer to any project is scope creep. Get something done, get it out in the hands. I love that. That's awesome. I need to remember that on even my home projects. Don't try to do everything. Nick, how about you? What's the one takeaway you want our audience to have?
Yeah, I think that the idea that ESM is not just another name for ITSM, that it brings in the business teams, and you own, as a business team, you own your own problems, your own processes. The IT team, as part of an ITSM build, they may be able to provide help, direction, concepts, but the business teams own their configurations, and that those processes that currently exist, if overly complex, should change. And that's where the thought exercise should begin: is how can we optimize our processes?
Love it. I'll play as well. So what I heard, Nick, I really love the find your champion. I think that's just so important on any project or any endeavor you're going to do, is who's rooting for you, because there will be times when people are like, I don't know, the old way worked just fine. You need that person, that voice in the organization that says there is a better way, and that can fight through any of the challenges and hurdles, and really help cement and rally the team around getting to a better place. And then, as Julie, you touched on, hey, it's a platform. And as Atlassian partners, we'd love to see you maximize your Atlassian investment, but whatever your platform flavor is, start maximizing your platform, and really start to think about it that way, and how to take this bigger, broader, holistic view as you go through it. And it will reap rewards at the end of the day to move to a more common platform solution. So I think that's the better way to go.
I think if anything, what the last 2 years have told us is that we have to be prepared, right, for the inevitable change that's going to happen. And if we stick in our old ways of doing things, that's often not scalable when these new influencers come. So it's the right time to really champion this, to help drive that innovation, so that you're better prepared for what's coming down the road.
Yep.
Yeah, I've talked to a bunch of clients that are actually bringing on modernization folks or transformation folks to help guide those conversations, because the last few years have shown us, you do have to be able to pivot when things change like that.
Yep. It's not a speed bump, it's an uphill climb, and we should always be looking to do what we do better and be more resilient. I think resiliency for me is one of those enterprise themes. How do we build resilient processes, teams, organizations, so that they can respond and adapt to change? Because we don't know what the next change is. We don't know what the next major hurdle is, but we want to be resilient and be able to outlast that. Okay, I don't see any questions out there. I'd like to just quickly run us through. I think I put the links out there in the chat for our ITSM to ESM definitive guide, but here they are as well. Again, it's a great read. I think it will help get your business team members on board today. And if you have any other questions, you want to see a demo, you want to talk about it, let us know, contact us, feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you. I think in lieu of any questions, is there, Julie or Nick, are there any parting thoughts you have? For me, I'd just like to say thank you, everybody, for spending a little bit of your time with us, and we'll get those slides out to you. Julie or Nick, I don't know if you have anything you want to throw in there.
just thank you guys for allowing me to be part of it. I very much appreciate it.
It's great having you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll give you 4 minutes of your lives back, and thank you for spending the morning with us.